Hi everyone, I'm Eris.
I'm Kennedy.
We are your hosts for the evening. Also, we're going to be interviewing
the soon-to-be best-selling author of Lost and Found.
Hi everyone, I'm Autumn, but my poetry name is AA Monet. So we hope you enjoy. Let's get started.
Okay, Miss AA Monet, what made you want to write a poetry book?
Honestly, heartbreak. I was in a 6-year-long relationship that ended back in 2019. So that is what all of the poetry is about love.
Okay, that's great.
So, do you remember when you first fell in love with poetry?
Yes, I do actually. So our high school, Roncalli Catholic High School, we had a poetry section freshman year of high school, and I was the only one in the class that understood what the poets were saying, and everything else I didn't really get. So I was in a weird place between like the left brain and the right brain, my right brain being the creative side, and I'm like, I like to write, but I'm not hooked yet. And so the poetry section really like expanded my mind. I'm like, oh my goodness, like this is where I'm supposed to be, kind of thing. And I was more natural to it, like Shakespeare and understanding what he was saying and things like that. So that's when I was like, I might have something here.
Pretty cool. Okay, so you said heartbreak is what basically inspired Lost and Found. Is there more to that? Who, what, like what? Where did this right? What's this heartbreak? You know?
Yeah, I mean, it was based in. I mean, some of my poetry actually started about 8 years ago. I started writing while I was in this 6-year-long relationship, and it was based. Every time I would write, it was based off of like an argument or being in like a bad point in the relationship. For some odd reason, that was the easiest for me to channel my emotions and start to write that way. So I've been writing for this book without me even knowing for the past 8 years almost. So
yeah, people to gain from reading Lost and Found.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, the power of self-love was my biggest thing from writing this book, and that's the part of the AA Monet, which my logo is AM, AAM. So that's the first part of the AA, and then the M from the Monet is that AM, and the mantra that I had to keep telling myself is I am enough. And so that's what I want to just have that reassurance, that affirmation of I am enough.
Okay, I'm enough too. Let me say I am enough too. Okay, so tell us about the process of writing the book. How long did it take? What was the best and worst part? Meaning and inspiration behind the title, you know, all of that.
Okay, so like I said, it was about 8 years because it was since 2019, the breakup, and including the 6 years. But in 2019, I was like, I want to write a book. That was my like decision maker, and then COVID happened. So then I pushed it back to 2021, and thankfully I did, because I grew so much as a writer. It would have been a disservice to put a book out in 2020, honestly. But the process has been a lot. It has been a lot, mostly because of the self-doubt, honestly, more than anything, to make sure I kept going. But my poetry mentor, shout out Kimberly, thank you for everything, seriously, because she has already published 3 poetry books, and she laid it out for me, publishing through Amazon. I published through Amazon's Kindle Direct Publishing, KDP, and that really helped it, because Amazon, which is not a shocker, lays it all out for you. They've got an article for everything. So that was the process, and then the easiest and the best part, I guess, was actually like getting to the editing and putting it all together and having the conversations like with my sister and my mom and things like that on like, and brainstorming like, how can I set this book up that's going to be the most beneficial to the readers. And then the worst part, like I already kind of mentioned, was the self-doubt, you know, getting to the finish line, you know, working with myself and seeing like, is this, getting over the questioning on if it's good enough for the world.
And how did you come up with Lost and Found as the title?
So I feel like when searching for yourself, I feel like that's like a common phrase. But what I wanted specifically about Lost and Found is the and part. The and part, to me, is the most important part of the process of becoming lost, when you're lost and becoming found. Because that and part, you just look over it. It's like, I'm lost and I'm found, but what all happened in the meantime? So I wanted it to be the lost and found. That's why I wanted to spell out and instead of using like an ampersand or something like that, because I'm like, that's its own part of this cycle, of this process. So yeah,
that's cool. So what sets this book apart from other books?
Good question. I think that I wanted a book that was like a self-help book, as well as like the journaling aspects with self-help books, all mixed into a poetry book, which I haven't seen that often. And so what sets mine apart is, number one, the QR codes being on the back of the book is pretty cool. I've never seen that before personally, at least. And so that's just a quick, direct, link to the community as a whole, which I think is pretty cool. And then the second thing is the write your own title. That's a really huge part.
I like that part. I did love that.
That's a good part.
That, I think, and what I think the power behind that is that I'm not telling you how to interpret the words. And that was the most important part to me, was like going to an art museum, right? You go, you look at a painting, how does this make you feel? And then you give it the title. And so those two things, I think, off the top of my head, were the two distinguishers.
So poetry is art.
It is.
That was cute. Okay, so you mentioned that you did the Kindle or the Amazon publishing.
Yes.
You have a mentor, etc. What, as a new author, what else did you experience with writing and publishing a book? Or was it as simple as that with the mentor, the publishing, etc.?
I'm probably summarizing it and not really talking about each of the processes. I think determining how to tell a story through poetry was the hardest part, honestly, because you get little snippets, right, in each poem. So how can you, beginning to end, tell me a story like a book would, right? So that, I think, was the huge thing when editing it, was and there's some really good poems that I like that didn't make it in because it didn't fit. Like, for example, some about my blackness or anything like that was like, that's not here yet, it's not meant for this poetry book. So I think the editing process, and honestly the found section, which is the third and final section of the book, was my hardest, because how can you claim being found, and in what ways did I find myself? And so that was the hardest, because I had to really look deep and be like, okay, I found myself here and also found myself here, and how do you write to that almost? So the found section was my hardest by far, because it's closing out the book, and these people are going to look to this for guidance, possibly. So yeah. If that answers it.
Speaking of the different sections of your book,
yes.
What is your favorite poem?
Ooh,
I know mine.
I know
mine
yours.
too.
Oh, I don't know yours. Interesting. That's really hard, honestly. I think they're also near and dear to me. I know that I really like the And Like Eve, which is my sister's favorite as well, which is the section divider to and. That's what starts the section. So I like that one the most, because that was my first time seeing what I was capable of.
Will you be reading that one tonight?
I will be reading that one tonight.
Okay.
Yes, I will be reading that one tonight. That one was my favorite because it's like multiple lines. I'm more of like a 2 to 8 liner poet, and that one's like 20 plus lines. And so that was my first time pushing myself, it felt like, as a poet. And that's the reason why I like that, because I think you could do a research paper on, just one of the lines possibly. I do think that it's that much going on in it where you can really dig deeper if you chose to. So I'm gonna say that one.
Okay, Miss AA Monet.
Yes.
What is your writing process? Do you need to go to the library, scooters? Like, what do you do? What do you do?
What works, right? Yeah. Honestly, it differs. I know that when I was writing the book and I got stuck, I reached out to like you and a couple of friends for a prompt, and you guys will see that in the book that there are some prompts in there, and I found out that that's kind of actually my preference, getting prompted, and you also given me a prompt before actually too. So that's a part of my writing process if I have like writer's block. But other than that, I like to sit down and really be in tune with my emotions and like, what do I want to say? And what helps me, crazy enough, is looking around my surroundings. I know one of my favorite poems, another favorite poem, is about lighting and light bulbs. And that's a common thing. Light and darkness is a common thing in my poetry book. And that was me literally looking around the room at my apartment. I'm like, huh. And I like to turn things, I like to kind of turn things inside out and be like, okay, how can I talk about this lighting? And in that poem, I talk about shadows and the power of that, like that dichotomy of like, huh, like, and so that, I mean, that's really a part of my process, is like taking it in and how can I see it in a different way.
So what's next? We have the book, it's published, it's on Amazon. What's next?
Honestly, for me, is growing as a poet. I think that is so important. Like, I'm still really new in this. Like, this is my first interview. Thank you guys. But I want to take workshops. I want to submit poems to literary magazines. I want to continue to strengthen my writing. I think that's going to be key. And with all that being said, yes, I'm looking at a second poetry book.
Yes.
So,
yes.
So, yeah.
That's what we're waiting for.
That's exciting. Congratulations
Yes.
again. I know I've told you this a million and one times. I know Kennedy has, family has, but congratulations. You did a great job. The book is
It's a
amazing.
Great book. Great
Thanks,
book.
guys. Appreciate you guys. So, yeah. All right, guys. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce you all to Lost and Found by AA Monet.